Good afternoon, good evening, one and all. Thanks for joining us in the Voice of CIO podcast. And this is a podcast for exclusively interviewing CIOs and executive leaders to tell the rest of the world of how the world of IT is transforming. And we are at an interesting inflection point in 2025. And when we head to 2026, the whole part of AI, machine learning, and a lot of these technologies are redefining the way we do business today. So today, I'm very honored to have Udi Schlessinger as a technology executive and a technical leader with a very proven track record of building and scaling data-driven products at high-growth companies. He has held CTO and senior data leadership positions at multiple venture-backed unicorn organizations, including Freshly Fever, Aurardia, and most recently, Blackbird. So thanks, Udi, for joining us today at the Voice of CIO episode. I hope you're doing well and enjoying this whole conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So one of the things that we were talking about, and I want to kind of get started with the first question, as you play this whole different roles in your own respective organization, I want to start with from your experience both as a CTO and an advisor. What are some of the most critical blind spots you have seen CIOs have when evaluating technology decisions? How can they develop a CTO mindset without becoming overly technical?
Obviously, there's many ways of answering this. I think one of the challenges I've seen is often not really being familiar with the technology. In some ways, thinking, not knowing what is possible, but usually a bigger problem is really thinking something is possible where it is not. So, for example, assuming they have enough data to do a machine learning model that can work at a certain level of accuracy, certain things. And this is crucial towards actually making smart decisions, and they just don't have enough experience. So that's very common. I think it's getting better in recent years, though.
Yeah, awesome. And you mentioned being able to think like a businessman while being highly technical. So for CIOs who are making technology investments, what are some of the red flags that indicate they are being sold technology or doing technology for the sake versus actual business objectives?
So I've seen clients who come up with, they have a problem they want to solve, but they're very fixated on the technology. And I think it's often not the right approach. You really try to find the right tool to solve the problem rather than force the tool into the problem. One example is that I've seen situations. So my background is in AI. I love AI. I've been doing it for more than 20 years. But if you can do things without AI and they work well, usually it's better not to use AI. And I'm saying it as an AI guy. So I've seen companies that were fixated on using machine learning when sometimes they don't really need to. So then the result is more expensive, more time consuming, more flawed. So really just try to find the right tool to solve the problem and then just use it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as a fractional CTO who have worked with startups and you have seen a lot of people making technology mistakes, particularly early stage companies. So, how should startup founders? And again, this is more important. It's not just about the unicorns and multi-billion dollar, billion dollar companies. We are looking at a lot of growth of startups with all this AI advent coming in. So, how should startup founders think about technology leadership before they can afford a full-time CTO because they are really going faster? They cannot afford to have large CTOs. So, what should be in their mind, and what are some of the common technology mistakes you have seen early stage companies make that would haunt them later?
So I'll answer the first. So I think founders, they need to be visionary. I mean, that's obvious. They need to aim for the sky. But that said, as a technologist, I often am in the position where I need to say, well, this won't work. You don't have the data. You can't train it. You don't have access to these things. So I think it's very important to try to be pragmatic. like I said, I think it's a bigger challenge for founders because they still need to be visionary. But having this, being aware of constraints and limitations, I think it would do them good if they don't have anyone who do that for them. In
Yeah.
terms of the second question, that was um, common mistakes. Yes. Sorry, I'll backtrack. I'll start again. So the second question, common mistakes. I think now is the golden age of AI. You really could do so many things, and every year it changes. Like things you could do now you couldn't do 5 years ago, and every year the bar keeps going higher and higher. So there's companies who it's very tempting and very appealing to just jump to something very ambitious. I've had clients and I've consulted to companies that the first thing they want to do is machine learning or AI is very, very ambitious, and they may not have the data, they may not have the processes, they don't have the organizational maturity to be able to do this. And sometimes they don't understand it. So I won't say it's doomed to fail, but it's a lot more likely to fail, to be abandoned halfway through. And it's a bit of a shame. So my advice is usually start with low-hanging fruits. Try to, really see what you can achieve relatively easily, relatively quickly, with minimal risk. If that works, grow. Nothing, I mean, you can always grow later. So, and I think that would be a better approach to gain confidence into technology, see that you can make it work. Because if you can make it work with something small, then you definitely should start with something bigger.
Right. Right, absolutely. And I think it's spot on. So start small, make sure that you build the momentum and start pushing in the right direction, because let's not boil the whole ocean.
Exactly.
And you have scaled up teams at multiple organizations. So, what advice would you give to CIOs trying to build technical teams in a today competitive market? I mean, the world of technology is just exploding. I mean, you cannot just limit yourself with one technology today and be complacent, because tomorrow is another game altogether. So, how has the fractional consultant model changed the game? Because I see a lot of people playing the role of fractional CTOs, CIOs, consultant. How has that changed the game in the whole landscape that we are operating today?
So I'll answer the first question first. So in terms of scaling, I can think of two dimensions. The first is that usually when you have a small company, you have very limited resources. So just finding generalists, people who can wear many hats, is absolutely crucial. Like you don't need a computer vision specialist. You need someone who can do AI and machine learning, and maybe can do data engineering and backend development if necessary. But really someone who can do a lot of things relatively, confidently, is much more appropriate. Later, when you grow, you can get the deep learning specialist or computer vision specialist, but at first, I think that would be a mistake. The second dimension is that AI assistant coding. I mean, I think if you're not using it, you're shooting yourself in the foot because it could really speed you up. But going from that to vibe coding is a mistake. And I think many technical people are learning it the hard way these days, myself included. It's very important to do it not full vibe coding. Like be sure, review what you get, really control the process, and rather let it control you. Then you can really gain the benefits while not really incurring technical debt. The last thing you want is to build very quickly a coding feature that turns out to be badly implemented and no one understands it. But it's definitely, things are changing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, yeah.
In terms of the second question, so how fractional CTOs are affecting things. So when I started, I mean, I started doing consulting about 6 years ago, and previously I just had full-time jobs. But it's very different because we get to work with a lot of different organizations. So that's one change. But we also get to be exposed to a lot of different technologies. I've had weeks where different clients wanted dramatically different things, and on one hand, it makes it very interesting and it keeps me on my toes. But sometimes there's a lot to keep up. There's a lot to learn. I love this challenge. I think for some people it might not be for them, but I like that things are changing. That I get to do a lot of very diverse things and learn a lot of things, and stretch my skills.
Yeah, great. And Looking at where technology leadership is heading, how do you see the CIO and CTO roles evolving? Because I see every day a new role emerging. There is chief data officer, there is a chief AI officer, there is a chief digital officer. So with all this technology leadership heading, what do you think and how do you see the roles of CIO and CTO evolving? Will they converge, diverge, or something entirely will change?
So it's very interesting how things are changing in multiple dimensions. My feeling, and obviously I could be wrong, I think things are not gonna converge, but rather diverge because there's more and more skill sets and expertise that are needed. So you need more people to really help with that and really understand things. So right now, like CIOs deal with the governance and with the IT system, whereas CTO deal with the technology. I think in the future, CIOs are going to be more involved with the data, the information aspects. I mean, it's in the chief information officer. So that means like owning data products, building data products, owning your AI, your organization's information for building machine learning and AI products, things like that, where technology, the CTO, are going to be in charge of more the technical aspects. What infrastructure do you need? How is it being done? How can you train it? It would be very interesting to see how the two evolve. And I'm sure it's not the end. Like you said, there's chief AI officer, chief data officer. So things are certainly very interesting these days.
Awesome. So one final comment or question would be for a lot of things which are newly coming in and people looking at that crystal ball of how the CIO should do it, what's one piece of advice, technology advice you would find yourself repeatedly giving to both CIOs and startup founders until they reach that level? So one piece of technology advice that is absolutely important for both CIOs and startup founders.
So I was going to give one answer, but I think I have two. So the one answer I was going to give is basically what I said before. Start small. Like aim to see where you can add value in your organization that is relatively a modest thing. You don't need to make big changes. You don't need very ambitious data. You don't need people to really bend over. If you can do that and you're able to do it, you can really start growing and you can scale your AI efforts and really do a lot more impressive things. But starting small is wise, at least based on my experience and my clients. The second thing is, and that's not what I was going to say before, LLMs are very widely used these days, generative AI, and it's an amazing technology, but it's very flawed. LLMs, there's things they can't do. And I've seen many organizations where they overestimate what can be done. And I just think be cautious. There's going to be newer technologies that are more accurate. They don't have hallucinations. I'm not saying LLM should not be used until then. It's very, very powerful technology. But keep that in mind that the technology is still not fully mature and probably not the right choice for certain AI activities. So just keep that in mind.
Awesome. That gives you a point towards let's not chase the next shiny new toy and trying to make people saying that if everybody is jumping into the bandwagon, let's also jump into it because you never know what you're getting into it until you go into much more depth. And it's also bringing in that aspect of AI governance that needs to be in place because you need to have guardrails around what are you playing out, what's the implication if something goes wrong, so you're better prepared. But it's also that it's not a magic wand, right? Things don't change automatically because you embedded on a new technology. I always say that a fool with a tool is still a fool, right? So
Yes.
understanding that perspective that we need to do everything to make that impactful requires us to take a cautious approach and see how we can make that really a workable solution. So absolutely a very important dimension that you brought in. Thanks so much, Udi, for giving us that insights on the lens of a CTO and seeing how this is evolving in the game of the CIO lens.
Thank you for having me, and it's been a very stimulating conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, viewers. I hope you enjoyed Udi's conversation about what's changing in the world of CIOs and how we need to start thinking about how technology is driving digital adoption, but also digital workers these days so that it becomes much more productive, efficient. But do not forget about the humanizing aspect of it. We are all here, human beings. We are social animals. We want to kind of touch and feel and see the opportunities together. So, but these are exciting times, and we will be with you on the next episode of Voice of CIO series. But make sure that you subscribe to our channel. Click on this button of the bell icon and start following us. And we hope to give you more value added services as we go through in this section around the Voice of CIO. Thank you once again, Udi, for your time today.
Thank you very much.